So I guess
We're there. Greg is presenting old school.
Do you want to introduce our speaker as the official program coordinator? Tracy?
Well, I don't know. Should I?
Yeah.
You can try.
Do you want to take responsibility for this?
Actually, I think you and I have the most history of anybody in here.
Probably.
Whatever.
Wait, excuse me?
Climbing history.
Climbing history.
Oh, okay, but like.
No.
Good history.
Since almost the rest of us are male, I would think that's.
Well, you started out though, your history wasn't good.
Although-
You took that
Yeah, that's what
history
he's
zero.
talking about.
He told me the story about chopping the bolts or something for your boyfriend's climb or something.
Yeah, I found those the other night. I didn't bring them tonight. I found those articles. Your article and my article.
I have them still too.
Yeah.
Mine's better.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
So I started climbing in 1993, and there's an area, Sandrock, if you haven't been to Sandrock yet, but Sandrock, all of a sudden, I started climbing all of a sudden when it started to grow. So there had been like this group of climbers initially in the 80s, and maybe even in the 70s too, I can't remember, like Jeff Grunberg, and when everybody was climbing. And climbing still was pretty small, and people went places, and I even remember the first time I went to the canyon, I was told that I'd be blindfolded when I was taken there, except for there wasn't enough room in the car, so I got to drive separate, and the whole time I'm driving my little BMW, shifter, I'm like writing on napkin like how to get there, where we're going. But anyway, so this area of Sandrock, people just started climbing there. Again, nobody had climbed there for a while. It wasn't real popular, let me just put it that way. It was like a redneck place. And
People were still climbing there, but it was the sport climbing explosion.
yeah, sport climbing explosion.
The
So,
sport climbers came on the scene and they're like, oh, drill, baby, drill.
yeah. So basically, Greg and I were not friends for a little while. Greg and I and a couple people, but they all forgave me. A couple of years later, they all forgave me. So.
We worked it out with great friends now. In fact, we were climbing at Iona about 2 years ago when I guess I was coming back after my broken collarbone. And people were like, she and I were climbing together. And they're like, well, what's your wife say about this? I'm like, that's not my wife.
Joey's the one.
Pardon?
Jody, yeah.
Jody, yeah.
Climbing wife.
Good
And my wife, my real wife jokes about that. Because
She's
she calls them
appreciative of that.
her sister wife. So she's like, okay, Tracy's one of my wives and Jody's another one. And she's cool with that. Okay.
So what's happening with these
Just a
bolts?
disclaimer here, he didn't break
So,
his collarbone climbing.
Greg Scott
It was
and
mountain
then
biking.
later Johnny Arms were putting up routes in Sandrock, but there was a whole group of people, Ben Faber, Greg, and who else was
Well,
in
they
that
were
group?
bolting trad routes. They were taking trad routes and turning them into sport routes.
That's like a no-no.
And so the Hard Pipe Swingers Coalition, which is Ben Faber and
Eric, what's his name?
Eric Campbell and Sporty, Dave Young and Jim Corbett and myself, we said, you know what, we're gonna make a statement.
We're not gonna take it.
We're not gonna take it, right? And we went there on a Saturday with hacksaw and we chopped a bunch of sport routes that were trad routes that tried to be converted into sport routes.
The funniest story though about that, because
Johnny
firstly,
Arms threatened to shoot us.
I didn't think that was right, but the funniest thing was when I climbed with Jim Ogle a couple of years later. Jim Ogle was in that group from Alabama, core group of climbers from the late 70s and early 80s, and so I'm climbing with Jim Ogle, and I am sitting there just fussing about the fact that Greg and everybody like chopped the bolts on First Black in Space because that was my first lead and my first whipper. Everybody
Somebody
followed.
bolted that?
Yeah,
There
well,
shouldn't be
it
both.
lasted about a year. And then
But that was my first lead, and everybody that was the first lead. You took a whipper at the top because it's really slopey to get to the top, and you're like gassed. And so I was fussing about the fact that it got bolted, and then Jim looked at me and he goes, "Well, I put the route up. It pisses me that somebody bolted it." So I was like, okay, all right. But nobody did it. So the thing was, nobody was doing those routes, and that's the only reason. To me, that's the only reason they bolted them was to give people more things to do.
But how do you know nobody's climbing a trad line?
Because there was no traffic on them.
How do you
There's
know?
no-
Because if you put gear in, you don't know.
So you go, so you know what, you go to Sandrock now and it can be a zoo, right? You go to Sandrock now and it can be a zoo. You used to go to Sandrock and there would be nobody there. You know?
But that's what I'm saying, is like, how do you know somebody didn't go out yesterday and climb that track line?
Well, it's done a lot. There'll be chalk and stuff on it.
There'd be chalk, there'd also be wear marks,
You're one of
where
those
but there'd be wear marks, you know, you think about climbing, like in North Carolina, there are wear marks where you put your cams in, right? You know, you,
Sometimes, not all the time.
but a lot of times
But
there
yeah,
are.
and
But if
Tracy's
you go
like,
there weekend after weekend, there's
Where
where
marks
on
are
it.
20 feet apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be North Carolina for sure, right?
and so that was sort of the sport climbers mentality. Is like, well, no one's doing these, let's just make them safe and we'll dumb them down to our level. You know, and that was sort of the trad climbers mentality. Like, yeah,
You need to
why don't you
climb
elevate
track.
your ability rather than
Yeah,
Yeah.
dive
dumbing
first.
them down to your level.
Dive first. You think about Woody Wall, the first bolt's like 30 feet off the ground. And then, so if you don't dive there, when you clip that one, the next one's gonna be like another 30 feet. So
You're
you're
closer-
definitely gonna dive.
You're closer to downfall
You
the
know.
second one. But anyway, yeah.
So-
Welcome to North Carolina.
Yeah.
But
So I love that.
the point for
I'm
us
so glad we
was
don't
like,
fuss about this stuff anymore.
and part of this is like people were going out and bolting boulder problems at Sandrock. I kid you not, they were putting bolts on boulder problems. So it'd be like a bolt halfway up the boulder problem and a bolt on top, so you could like lead it.
Was that Kelly?
I don't know who was doing it. Why are you guys doing this? And Johnny Arms showed up, and there was a confrontation. And yeah, but it was like
Maybe I won't ask him to come be a speaker.
Johnny will come.
He doesn't have a Jaguar anymore, so. Somebody told me he
Yeah.
doesn't have the Jag.
Last time I
He's
saw
got-
him, he
he's
had
got a
it.
Mercedes
Oh, okay.
now.
That must just be
He's
a
got a Mercedes.
rumor.
He's got a Mercedes
I heard a
now.
rumor he didn't have the Jag anymore.
He does.
I know he stopped making shine.
I didn't know he made new Jag.
Oh, he
So,
made good
I'm gonna
shine.
tell one more story and then let you get started, because speaking of like the way things have always been, you know, so I started climbing and I was doing kids programs, so my first instinct was this would be great for kids, you know. Then everybody, I'm saying everybody, but all the old guys, they were like, you can't do that. You can't teach kids to climb. It's like, you know, for them to belay, you know, you've got to be like old enough to drive to belay. That's pretty much what Chris Watford told me.
Is that what he was saying?
That's what Chris Watford told
No,
me.
this
So-
is-
I was
she was
belaying
blaming
him
it.
at like 8 years old.
No, but I'm just saying.
But you can drive.
I'm just
too,
saying
so.
what I was. I'm just saying what I was told. What I was told. So you know, I march ahead and I start like you know doing climbing camps and stuff with kids, and everybody's mad at me for doing that. You know, but now I think about it. I was the first person that did that, and look at what they do at Stone Summit now. Look at these itty bitty kids that are belaying. I never taught kids under the age of 9. I
Yeah.
swear, they're like 6-year-olds with gree-grees.
That's really not good though, if it's crowding Stone Summit on Tuesday.
It's all my fault. It's all my fault.
It's all
my
Chris's.
fault.
Too many people there now.
But I saw an opportunity, you know. But
I think
so and then the old guys, another old guy story. We should just do old guy stories today. Jim Dowdy told me that he went. So where did Bob? Bob used to work at before
Xanadu, yeah.
Xanadu. Xanadu was the only climbing shop. And then Jim Dowdy, who's an old climber guy, he went climbing. I forget where he said he went. He went climbing someplace, and he was so proud of himself. He led like a 10 or an 11. Went back and told Bob at Xanadu that he had done that, and then Bob said, "Did you use any friends?" And Jim said, "Yeah, I used a friend." He goes, "It doesn't count then." Like unless you've done the climb on nuts, it didn't count. So yeah, I had to put up with a whole bunch of old guys who were trying to tell me what to do.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah.
He just seems like a bunch of old guys.
And there weren't that many women that climbed either. There was Paul Perenard's wife, Tracy, and there was Robin.
Greg's wife
She
used to
was
climb.
already famous by the time I started climbing though.
She
There was
was up and
Julie.
coming,
There was
yeah.
Julie and Chris and Fernando's girlfriends. No, Chris and not Fernando. So there was Julie.
Chris
and,
Waffer's what's her name, Leslie.
no, after that.
After Leslie, it's Amanda. There's a whole litany. There's like I can think of like 5 or 6 between the two. So.
But there weren't that many women. So there were a whole bunch of guys, but not very many women. I got picked on a lot. Yeah.
It makes you tough.
Yeah, it did make me tough. I was taught carry your own stuff, be on time, carry your own stuff.
Carry Greg's stuff
There's
too.
no whining.
No rocks in the
There's no
back.
whining, and no, do whatever you have to do to clean a route. There's no like you.
That's
there was
good. The
Yeah.
rules.
No man
not
gets
you know
left
yeah.
Basically, handle yourself.
That's
Uh,
legit
Handle
rule.
yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get started.
All right. I'll go really quick. So.
Oh, so this is my.
Oh yeah, that was the intro, right?
Yeah, it's my friend
Wow.
Greg.
Yeah.
It's my friend Greg.
This is an old guy.
My friend Greg Allen.
We still speak.
Derek was invented.
That was it. Are you done?
The-
Okay. So, for those of you who don't know,
Where's your man
Hey
bun?
baby, nice rack.
Wow, ladder rack.
I'm moving.
Where's your man bun?
I shaved it. I have a stylist now. So I'm moving. I am trying to get rid of crap.
Can I have one of your friends for like my collection?
I'm keeping those, but I have a rack.
Well, that's what she said.
What I really have that I want to get rid of is when I was president of the club,
Oh, I remember you.
I had to learn to belay on one of those.
somebody emailed me and says, "Oh, if you, I will send you a box of gear if you review it." And I ended up with. Let me count 'em. These are the ones I haven't given away yet. I have 4 of these giant rescue figure 8s. And if anybody wants a brand new, shiny, big wall rescue figure 8,
How about unused?
unused, shiny,
Could you make an art thing out of it? Maybe we can.
I'm
do
not a
something.
welder. But yes, I
You're
could.
gonna hang it off the
If
back.
anybody
of the car
wants
like a
one, these are free.
That's like a repellent game.
We used to belay on it.
Anybody
Can you
else?
imagine?
You could like probably use them for nunchucks
I
against.
got a friend who does those on trees.
Hey, can I have one of your number one friends? The original?
Yeah.
Send a chain.
I'll give it back to you. I just wanted my collection.
Yeah. I got one left. Who wants it?
I got one.
Ben wants it. It's a paperweight. All right. So
That looks like something Batman would use.
you could kill somebody with that. All right.
Send a
So
chain.
I brought a bunch of stuff from my old crap, right? So you guys are welcome to come look at this at whatever. This is actually my first Recreational Equipment Incorporated Your Outdoor Co-op catalog from 1975.
Yeah, you can buy a paint lather.
I saw that. It's on the page opposite of the tennis rackets.
Yeah.
And so, and you could actually take and mail order the hang glider. This thing used to have a form in there where you would fill out the form and you'd fill out the tax
Yeah,
and the
right.
shipping, and you'd mail it to them with a check. You'd calculate the amount, and
It
then
would come in a
a
box
month
like that.
later, all your shit would show up in the mail. This is a National Geographic article that from 1974, which I found in my grandmother's basement when I was 13 years old, and I'm like, that looks really cool, I gotta do this. And so I started rock climbing the first chance I got, but this is what started all that.
Where are they climbing?
They are climbing, this is kind of funny because they're climbing the half dome at Yosemite, and it was a sandbag. What they did was the 2 other guys that were gonna do it, there's 3 guys, and then one guy was in charge of the gear, and he's like, well, I only wanna do it if we're gonna do it without pitons. So they get like halfway through the second day, and it's like, hey, this is getting kind of thin, I need a piton, and the guy's like, I didn't bring any.
You brought a sky hook though.
They did bring skyhooks, yeah. But so it was like no one had ever done anything that big with all gear. And of course they didn't have friends, they were doing it all on nuts and hexes.
What's crazy though, it took them like 3 or 4 days to do it.
Oh yeah. Now you're doing it like in 24 hours or less. So then I dug up a bunch of old as shit rock climbing gear. This is old ice climbing gear. And so back in the olden days when you had to carve your ice screws out of stone, this is what we used. And so if anybody wants to come look at that and knock yourselves out, I've got a bunch of
I think
other.
Jeff still uses those, doesn't he?
No, I think he's upgraded to good ones. This is just a bunch of old crap. But one thing I found, I'm going to pass this one around because this is pretty cool. In an effort to save weight, Chenard started producing hollow carabiners. This is a hollow carabiner. Wow. And that's Chenard Equipment Company. So for those of you who don't know, Chenard Equipment Company was the precursor to both Patagonia and Black Diamond. And I've actually got some old, this is an old Chenard Summit pack, Chenard Equipment for Alpines. And I noticed that Patagonia re-released this pack recently. It looks basically exactly the same. And but it's like the new retro. This is like the original one. So if you guys want to look at that, knock yourselves out. And then this is like all my old gear. So if you guys want to see, Gary was asking about this earlier. This is actually, Tracy was mentioning.
Is that the whole set of the Wild Country Friends then?
Yeah. And they're set up like with the trigger pull bars and like
How much were those at the time, Greg?
oh god, they were expensive as shit. They were $30.
So this says something
But people
like
would-
1,600 kilograms.
Yeah,
So that just must be resting.
it's like static pull on it. Yeah.
We talked to like Shannon and the guys that they used to climb with. They were only 15 and 16 years old, and so they would have like one rack in between them.
Or you
And
have
everybody
like
would contribute to the one rack.
you would have like one guy would have like all the hexes, and the other guy would have all the stoppers, and the other guy would have 2 or 3 friends, and so you're like combining all your
I
shit.
live on this.
So this is what Gary was talking about. This is Tracy was mentioning Jeff Grunberg earlier.
Oh yeah, Jeff Grunberg.
And he was making these, originally Friends came in a whole number of sizes, like a 1 was 1 inch, 2 was 2 inches, 3 was a 3 inch, right? Jeff was making these half-size Friends called T-bones. And so that's what this is. And I actually bought this from him on my honeymoon when I was in the Gunks. I bought it from him out of his backpack. And so that's the T-bone.
That's impressive.
But that trigger,
What size is it?
Hey, it's still
Is
there.
it
It
looks like a cement
It needs to be oiled up.
We used, the end of it, we used to
What
give
size?
cows pills with that. It was a long pole, and you stick the
Yeah,
pill
it
in, you
looks-
stick it down in the cow's throat.
Oh, yeah.
And pull that trigger.
So like this is like this time when the cams came out. So I started climbing, cams didn't exist. And this is like the first generation of the cams by Ray Jardine. And what we did was we would put these, they came with a sling on here. Actually they came like this with no slings, and you had to tie your own sling on the end. Now they come with sewn slings. But what we were doing was the Gunks tie off, which was tie them off horizontally so you can stick them in a horizontal and they'd be stronger. And then we put, with some parachute cord, we get pull cords to like you could clean them with. So like, you get up a stuck piece and you just yank on this and it would pull the cams back. That's what that's for. So yeah, just pass those around. I got a bunch of examples of those. This is just old style, old school gear.
We need to do an old school trip where we just climb on Greg's old crap.
Yeah.
They did that. Y'all did that at Sandrock one day.
Yeah, we did. Here's
They wore
another, this
salami.
is a Chenard
They went and wore
Hollinger
salamis
beer.
and used old gear and did white gold.
Oh,
yeah.
That's legit.
There's actually a picture of in Boulder Dash of Kirsten belaying me at Sandrock from 20 years ago.
Denmark and I take a leader rescue or self-rescue class in the rig.
Oh, yeah.
Back around 2001, and we were using all that old crap.
This is the anchors.
Go look at
We
the
were
anchors
hanging like
going,
8 people off the anchors on that.
you had to use a rod to
So anyway, if you guys are curious later, come by and look at all this old crappy gear
The size
that
is
Kelly.
actual.
Probably like a
Okay, so I got rid of all the. I got rid of this giant. All right, let's do the slideshow.
Kirsten, or you get the lights.
Never mind.
Warrior guy. Warrior guy.
Oh, I guess those two are tied
He
together.
only likes using his old stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
It's one of those ones.
I did them both.
All right, so I'm gonna go through these pretty quick, but then I've got another slideshow from Canada, which is really good. I was hoping Tom Kenny would show up, but he didn't. So, This is a trip I did to the Wind Rivers in the late 80s, early 90s. And that is Pangora?
My
I think it's
knuckle
Pangora.
That's what.
You say Pangora?
Pangora,
You got
yeah.
one of these, Steve?
So,
Like, I can slot this in and hang on.
all right, so if you look here, this is the circular towers.
It's like I can pull on.
They were a lot taller than weren't they?
Yeah, and so this one is War Bonnet, and you can see all the little spires up here like that. And then this is Warrior 1, and there's Warrior 2 over here. And young Greggy with his mullet is right there.
Can you focus
Spray
it
paint for
anywhere?
graffiti?
Yeah,
Dad, can you focus it anywhere?
It's like
I
Got it.
think that's his focus.
Oh, that's good right there, look at that. Wow.
So the story of this trip was kind of funny. It was a trip where my buddy Steve Ritchie wanted to do a mountain Alpine mountaineering trip, and we did a week in the Rocky Mountain National Park, and we climbed Jackson Johnson Route and Thunderstorm, and then we climbed some stuff back in Bob Order and his wife Kelly in Rocky Mountain National Park. We climbed the Spearhead and Chief's Head and stuff like that. And it turns out that we found out later after we were climbing that Kelly was like nude sunbathing in the camp, and we couldn't see her because she's like a mile away. We could like see her sunbathing, and we couldn't tell that she wasn't wearing any clothes. She told us later, like we'd have hurried a lot more if we'd done that. But so this is the second half of that trip, and on the hike in, Steve got a stone bruise on his foot and couldn't climb. And I'm like, well, I've got a week here and I'm going to stay climbing. He's like, well, I'm going to Lander and get drunk all day, every day for like a trip to go home. So he's like, I'm going to leave you here. I'll come back and pick you up in 4 days. And so I'm in the Circle of the Towers by myself. And so I'm like, all right. So I ended up meeting up with Bill Hatcher, who's a photographer. And I also met up with Billy Westbay on that trip and climbed Pangora with Billy Westbay.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
shit. That's another good story. This is Bill Hatcher took this photo, and the day I climbed with Billy Westbay, we did Pangora, which is like a 13 northwest face of Pangora. It's like a 13 pitch route. We did it in like 8 pitches, and we passed another party by going on another route and going around because they wouldn't let us pass. So we said, well, screw you, we'll go around you. And basically, they never saw them again.
So were you just sitting there with the cardboard sign saying, please climb with me or something like that?
No, I was more like hanging out. Like anybody I saw that walked through the camp, my campground was like, hey, I'm looking for a partner, you know, my partner's. But we actually had a bear come to our camp one night while we were eating dinner.
Did you climb with the bear?
No, we chased the bear off. That was another story. Yeah.
That's all different kind of bear.
It was, so anyway, so that's Bill Hatcher showed up and his models didn't. He was up there for a North Face catalog shoot, so he was looking for people to photograph. And so we ended up climbing.
He should have been there for the nude sunbathing.
Yeah. So, anyways, just climbing around. Because I think that's on the approach to Pangora. This is goofing around in some North Face gear.
Heels as you're tied in.
Well, we're on top of the wool set at this point. It's just, there's me and my mullet.
Look good.
You look like Beavis.
I know. Isn't that great?
It was a different time.
That's before you got married.
I didn't get to keep the jacket either. I was a little pissed. I was like, this is a great nice first jacket. Yeah, I gotta take it back.
Greg, was this before you got married?
I know it's married.
Okay.
Was that one?
Because
Yeah,
I saw the
you're-
picture. I saw the picture you posted, the family picture.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so young. You're
See,
very
this is
young.
about the same. This is kind of the same time
About the
period.
same time.
So, yeah, this is like, I wanted to keep the jacket. He was just like, nah, I gotta do that.
I want to point out too, this is so old school. This carabiner is connecting the belay loop to the leg loops. Yeah. I would be looking. There's some.
And that's not a chalk there.
At least he had a harness on.
Yeah.
For a
And-
while,
and-
he had harnesses.
Hands.
Right.
Because usually we're shorts there. Yes.
Oh, there's a
Oh,
That's
I didn't
so
realize
totally
somebody-
80s.
In that 80s.
I need to take a picture of this.
Did you have
You're
tights?
not things.
Not in this picture, but
Did you wear tights?
I
Like early 90s.
could have brought those. I have some pictures of me in climbing bag. I could have brought on natural tights and those.
You got earring? You need to wear tights when you go climbing.
What percentage of your pack is devoted to hair products?
None. That's all natural.
Shoe.
That's like me after 4 days of not showering. So yeah, so that's just sorting gear.
What kind of
The
shoes,
gel
what kind of
going.
shoes you got?
That's
Go
something
back,
about
go back.
Back.
Go back, what shoes do you have on?
Those are L'Oreal Furiers, high top Furiers.
So, wait, did you say how old you were back then?
I was probably like 28 or 29.
No, really? Wow.
He has always looked like a teenager.
Like,
Like my whole upbringing, people thought he was my brother.
yeah, that's a true,
And then
they thought
that's
you
a
were
true
his mom.
statement.
This is like 1990.
Who's your mom?
No, this is let me think. This is 1992, so I'd have been 31 in this picture.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and
by the way, my age group.
yeah, I'd have been 31, and you would have been about 2 years old.
I was born in '87, so I'd have been 5.
You did 5, okay, so yeah.
Ron would have been 2.
Okay, yeah.
I was born in
It's all
87.
such a board thing.
I know.
Those look like EVs.
And the ropes, look how fat the rope is.
Yeah,
These are not
11
single,
millimeter.
yeah, these are not single ropes either. I mean,
No.
double.
Why, you need
These
one
are-
of these to
yeah.
belay.
Yeah, that's, my first rope was 10.5, it was fat sucker.
So anyway, that's a good shot too. We're just rappelling off a wolf's head, and then we're just hiking around. Then now at the end of the day, we're like, okay, let me do some catalog shots, and you know, put some rain gear on and hike around. You know, that would be my pack. I don't know whose pack that was. I would never, I would have never
What's with
carried
the
a pack.
powder
that
blue
big.
deal?
What?
What's with the powder blue deal?
Well, those were sample North Face.
This is a North Face catalog shoe. Photo shoot. This is my days of modeling.
That's why it's
Short-lived
it's
days.
50 years
My
He was
4
2
hours
days
of
before
modeling.
Wyoming.
And I got a whopping $15 out of that day.
And you got the one.
Well, Bill sent me a great note. He says, "Here's your commission check." I had to sign a model release, and he goes, before I even took pictures of me, he had them with him, and then he's like, a year later, I get a check for $15, and there's a picture of my hand and my beat to shit stove and a little piece of a North Face jacket in the North Face catalog. And he goes, "Here's your commission check, $15. Spend it unwisely."
Unlikely.
You earned every penny.
See your
I
hand
did.
wobble.
Is that Shannon?
That's Jim Corbett.
Okay.
I was actually going to stop here. This
What's
is
he on?
This is the second ascent of solid liquid gas.
Where's that at?
It's Lake Toxaway, North Carolina.
Okay.
It's actually illegal to climb here.
It is illegal?
It is illegal. That's this is
Was it illegal at that time?
yes, it's always been illegal.
It says sneak in place.
I'll flip it these real quick. This same route, solid liquid gas,
How thick is that ice ball there?
right there.
Yeah. Is it pretty like?
Where it spills
Pretty
over
bad?
the lip is probably like 18 inches.
Okay.
Second pitch. This is actually my first grade 4 lead. I was like maybe 23. That's the second and third pitch. This is like a 500-foot tall ice line.
Is that early morning or?
This is during the middle of the day. I mean, it doesn't
The
like.
last picture was twilight or dark.
No, it's in the morning. So that's me leading the second pitch. Top it out. This is, I think this is, it's either Lake Toxaway or Raven Ball. This is old.
Where in Lake Toxaway is this?
Overprotecting that route.
Yeah, it's kind of overpaid. I think this is Raven Ball.
It's North Carolina, you don't have deer.
Yeah, you don't need here.
Just don't fall.
Gravity's less than
That's what
this.
you're saying.
So in this picture, this is Shannon leading the third pitch of solid liquid gas. This is like the second ascent. What you can't see is I'm tied to these giant cedar trees behind me that are probably 2 feet, 3 feet diameter. And last time I went up there, those things had been blown over and they're gone.
Yeah, who's age great?
Yeah.
My looks are not a
Treasure.
So
You're going.
this pillar, it's not solid. It's a big hollow soda straw. So this ice is about maybe 8 inches thick, and it's just a big ring.
That's one of my favorites.
I did that one time.
I don't know what that
I
is.
walked my PC.
I think that's the same stuff. Yeah, that's the same pitch. More solid than guys. I'm just flip these.
Looks like Shannon.
No, that's Jim Corbett. Shannon had blue bibs and Jim had red. And, that's
We talked
right.
about that earlier, everything was either blue or red.
Yeah. That's how old this stuff is. This is same pitch. This is I got a good scar from the trout.
It's steep, that's a lot steeper. than
Yeah,
what
it's
I
a
thought.
grade 5.
About what year is this?
I'm gonna say late 80s, early 90s.
Does that route come in much anymore or not?
Oh yeah.
But it's off limits?
Yeah, you have to sneak in. So this is a route that Jim and I put up over at Toxaway called Popsicle. We were both new dads. And at the top of it looked like one of those big popsicles from the freezer. And this particular picture, I took it because this is Jim Falling. It used to be in Call of the Wild. It was posted up there for quite a while. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does, do you think the ice comes in every, like now, like it did back then, or is it less?
It depends. It would go like, solid liquid gas was put up and then there was like 10-year gap between the first ascent and the second ascent. And then some years it's come in like every year for 5 years in a row.
Really?
Some years it'd be like, it would come in for 3 or 4 years. So I'm not gonna comment on climate change or whatever. It just depends.
Right.
So, more solid, this is solid liquid gas. I think this is as hard as single pitch ice climb in the Southeast. And I think that's it for this here, so yes.
Why do you think it's the hardest pitch?
It's got everything. It's got an overhang. It's got a steep ass pillar.
Now, does it depend on like, the temperature, like
Oh, yeah.
how hard or easy it climbs?
I did it one time with Jonathan Holiday, and we got up to the above the first pitch, above the really steep, scary stuff. The second pitch is pretty easy. And at the belay, about 10 feet above the belay, there was a 1/4-inch crack completely across the ice formation. So you can tell it is supported from the bottom because, this is cracked and the top half is attached from the bottom half. And it's a screw belay. So you're like, okay, hurry.
So do you V-thread to rappel down or?
Well, for that thing, you can rappel tree to tree.
Okay.
So Jonathan came up and he was like thinking, oh God, that was the hardest grade 4 I've ever done. I'm like, that's because it's a grade 5. Because this is a year where ice was like super fat, super in. This is the end of the season. This thing was starting to get out of condition. I didn't realize it was that out of condition when I started on it. But at any rate, so Jonathan was leading the second pitch, and so I'm like watching the gap, and it's getting bigger, and I can see it. And so I'm like, okay, we'll just get above the belay, so that if the bottom falls out, I got a fighting chance. So get above the crack, and then put a screw in, and then just haul ass. And so he did, and by the time he got to the top of the pitch, the gap had gone from like a 1/4 inch to an inch.
But the thing is with the ice, like depending on the temperature, it could be a grade 4, but it could also go to a grade 3 depending on how good the ice is.
Or a grade 5.
Right, yeah, it can fluctuate.
Right. The point I'm trying to make is that the bottom was like melting out and
Right.
it's lower to the ground. And the top was just bonded to the slab.
The softer ice is definitely.
And
So
But if it's steep, it's still gonna be hard.
Do you,
So anyway, we ended up, when he got to the summit, he was on a tree belay. And I just hauled ass up there, and you could rappel from there down to a tree ledge and rappel from there to the tree ledge.
so if you're gonna do a climb like this, is it better to get out there early in the morning while it's still the
Oh
sun's
yeah,
not-
absolutely.
Okay.
But I mean, this is a case where like, if I had known that crack was there when
Yeah.
I started, I would not have done it.
Okay.
But then once I got up there, I'm like, okay, let's just push forward. So, all right, this is what I really came to show. Was this trip to North Carolina. So a lot of you guys may recognize this guy. That is Tom Keeney.
It's Canada, right?
What?
Isn't that Canada?
Yeah, it's just Canada.
You said North Carolina.
No, sorry.
That's Tom, right?
That's
Really
TK.
North Carolina.
This is North Carolina.
This is not the one I reviewed.
And so this is kind of funny because I was looking for a climbing partner, and Scott Perkins suggested I go climb with Tom Kenny. And at the time I was like mid-30s and in my prime, and Tom was like 57, but he's super fit. And so this is our first real trip together. We climbed at Foster Falls one day to see if we could get along, and then we went to Canada. And this is our trip.
So it's not supposed to hold them too?
Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure he was a safe player, which I didn't know. Tom and Scott recommended him, and for those of you guys who don't know, Tom is like, if you've ever seen the
He's Tarzan, if Tarzan ever grew up.
is it the Dos Equis, well, the Dos Equis commercials, the world's most interesting man? That's Tom King in the flesh. And I didn't know this at the time. But anyway, and Tom was a Bronco rodeo rider. He was a regionally ranked triathlete. He played middle linebacker for Vanderbilt University. He knew Thurman Munson on a first name basis because Thurman Munson was the sportscaster at Vanderbilt at the time. Pardon?
Did he play polo?
He was a regionally ranked polo player. He was a regionally ranked steeplechase rider where he had a terrible accident and went over the handlebars of his horse, which landed on his head and poked both his eyes out of his socket and almost killed him, almost crushed his skull.
And he said that people were like, he's dead, and he couldn't talk, and he's like, I'm thinking to himself, I'm not dead, somebody please call 911.
Yeah, he tried to get up after the horse landed on him, and he couldn't see because both his eyes were hanging out of his head. And the paramedic, or the first aid people that were there were like, oh shit, they were rushing up to him like, you just gotta lay down, and airlifting him out of the horse venue. He did it in front of the grandstand in front of his wife. He spent 6 weeks in neurological intensive care and set a record for the first person to come out of neurological intensive care and not be a vegetable.
It was the longest time spent in ICU without being a vegetable.
Without being a vegetable,
Yeah,
right.
and he still was.
6 weeks in neurological ICU. He got hooked on painkillers while he was in ICU, go figure, and had to go through rehab. I mean, he's an amazing
He's
dude.
broken his own femur.
He
to
broke
save
his femur.
own
He
Broke
broke
life.
his
femur.
femur on purpose to get out of a kayak because he was pinned upside down under a rock. And the only way he could get out of the boat was to break his own femur to get out.
Pretty sure he's not human. Pretty sure.
And
And then
then
he stayed in the woods that night.
his grip had left him, and he spent the night in the woods till some four-wheelers came to rescue him in the morning.
So he was underwater when he broke his femur?
Yes, because he was
He's
going
like
to drown.
under like a rapid and pulled him under, and his leg was good. So
He was caught in one of those, the circle things.
Yeah.
The funniest story,
How did he break, what did he use it? His arms?
he pushed down like this because he could feel like the fibroses were pushing on his boat, and he couldn't get out because the boat was getting deformed. He's like, the only way to get out is to break my fingers.
I was breaking it too quick.
Broke it.
You know how hard it is to break them.
Yeah, Tom is a badass.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
So-
The funniest story from Tom, there's two, but I'll tell the short one. He was a co-op student in Juarez, Mexico, and decided to go. In El Paso, Texas. Decided to go across the border to Juarez to a titty bar, and was in this titty bar, and there was some dancer on stage that was like dancing around with some pasties and a G-string, and some drunk airman from the local air base got up on the stage, and this is Mexico, right? And he starts kissing on this dancer, and then turns out the dancer's a boy. So this giant fight erupts, and Tom Kenny's like a Golden Gloves boxer, so he can handle himself. He's like, I don't want to get in a fight in Mexico. I don't want to go to jail in Mexico.
Yeah.
So he's like on the floor crawling out towards the back door. And he gets to the back door and somebody's blocking his way. So he stands up and like decks the guy, knocks him out, and gets out the back door right when the cops are coming to the front door. But when he hit the guy so hard he broke his hand. And he was like showing, don't ever play Trading Scars with Tom Kenny because he's showing me this knot on the back of his hand where he broke his hand in Mexico trying to escape from a bar fight in the titty bar.
When you break your femur, usually your quadriceps.
Yeah.
It pulls the bones past each other.
Have
Yeah.
you not seen his quad? Have you not
So
seen
you haven't
his
seen this
quad?
one? So when they did the surgery to fix it, they cut through the fascia. So every time he walks, one of the inner muscles of his quadricep plops out.
It bulges out.
He goes, bloop, 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 bloop. It is so freaky.
And then what, 5 years ago, we went to England and
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he won best sportsman for a rowing race in Thames.
He said they called him, he said he was, like you're the belay for basically, like if you're, ugly, if you're gonna put all the routes up or whatever. He said that after he rode once, all the other teams were asking him to row with them. So he was like rowing for Italy and for Argentina, whatever.
He like signed up for 2 races
Whatever.
and he rode like 10 races that day. And then the next day, he had nothing on the schedule, he rode like another 10. People were recruiting him.
Like in a crew.
Yeah.
How old was he? When
He was like 75.
75 when he did that.
No, he's like 75 now.
Yeah.
Did he win an award there?
He was like 70. He was like 70.
He
But
was
Paula
like-
didn't go with him.
He was at the
I'm like,
limit
why
of his
did you
ability
take
to
me
travel
then?
actually,
Yeah.
because of his mental capacity.
He was just starting to lose memory.
Didn't he win an award there for doing all that shit?
Yeah.
He won Best Sportsman Award from this rowing event. It's a 500-year-old rowing event.
It's just so funny.
crazy.
We should just, we're doing like this is like a
It's a
thing for
Tom,
Tom
and
Cannon.
I invited
But-
Tom and Paula, but they didn't show.
So he met Bernie Mac when he was playing golf here in
That's
Atlanta
kind of where you
one
are right
time.
now.
And so he was playing with Paula, and Bernie Mac and his manager, wanted to play too, but they were like, well, can we play with you, so they could move faster. And
Tom's
that's
a
just the
scratch
kind of
golfer.
person that Tom was, And then Tom was giving Bernie Mac a hard time about being a bad golfer. Bernie Mac lived in Hawaii and golfed all the time. He's like, I thought you said you do this all the time.
Tom was probably beating him.
He was.
Tom was a scratch golfer.
Yeah, he was amazing. I would go
All right.
climbing with Tom, and we would stop and shoot guns. We would stop.
Oh, yeah.
We would stop and we'd go climb, then we'd shoot some guns, and then we would
Heck yeah.
stop at a golf, range and shoot some balls.
Yeah.
So you open the back of his car, and he was prepared for whatever sport. He could
At
possibly-
Chuck Crawford's bachelor party, like,
Oh yeah, you guys shaved his eyebrow.
that was Chuck's eyebrow. Yeah, we did that, but that was another story. But Tom we're just standing there drinking beer, and he pulls out a 357 Magnum revolver and empties it into an oak tree right from me to you. And a room this crowded. And he goes, and then puts it back in, and we're like, ooh. And the next morning, we could find the entry points of the bullets, but nothing exited, But yeah, Tom was a character. He's a character. He's still alive. So, all right, back to our trip. So this is Mount Temple. This is our first objective, our first try at it. We failed miserably, and we're doing this route that goes up this, and this is the big step, and then it goes up to the summit. This right here is the Amir Couloir, and that's another like a 3,000-foot snow belly. This is about halfway up, looking across at Mount Fay, and this is on the approach still. And climbing on this, you can see how good a quality the rock is. And Tom and I were still just getting to know each other. He's telling me all these stories about his bar fight in Mexico, and his horse accident. Oh, we show up on the trip, and he was having back problems from his horse accident, and so he could do the trip, he had gotten a cortisone shot
That's right.
in his back, and didn't tell me that he had this back problem. And we meet at this hotel in Calgary. He goes, oh, by the way, can I get you to change my dressing on my back from this cortisone shot? Because I can't reach it. And I'm like, what back problem and what cortisone shot? But, and Tom was like, it is what it is.
You're still
He was-
leaking, still bleeding, or whatever.
No, he'd had it done like 2 days before, but he had like a giant hole in his back, so it was like, it's a giant gauge needle, because they shot the cortisone into his spinal cord. And he said, for me to be able to survive the trip, I need a cortisone shot. And they tell you the rest after that, screw that, I'm just gonna go. Also found out his shoulder was completely wrecked on this trip, and after this trip, he came back and had shoulder surgery like 2 months later. So but we had a good time. And there's young Greggy with all the, look at the old camps. Still on the, those are my long over. So
You look like you're posing for another catalog shot then.
yeah. And then you can see how everything's giant. So like this right here, that's the camera case.
You look like you're getting ready to climb a big bathroom wall, big wall with all that
Yeah.
gear.
And we're like carrying all our vivid gear and everything. So, and that's Canadian Rockies are beautiful. So, and you're just looking at like this, pretty much any piece of gear that's bigger than a knife blade is worthless. So you're carrying some pitons and a hammer too. So. And that's our first bivvy. And it was ugly. And we woke up in the morning, and this is what we woke up to.
What lake is that?
Lake Louise.
I was gonna say that's like Louise.
Oh, it's so pretty.
And so we woke up to this, and we're like, okay, we gotta bail. And we had gotten lost on the way up. So we were gonna go down the way we came up rather than trying to find the real way. And we ended up leaving like a third of the route.
Really?
Yeah. Tom was like, well, what are we gonna do? There's no fixed anchors. I'm like, we got the whole rack. We can buy more gear, so let's just go down and be safe. And so we were bailing in this kind of weather. And there's one of our belay anchors. That was one of the better ones. Basically, it's just a giant boulder with a slinger on it.
Looks good.
And
I'm not even a ring.
nope. I didn't bring a bunch of rings with me. This is like one of the $30. And that's a stupid marmot. See him?
In the middle there?
I hate marmots. You like them until they chew up your $300 mountain boots. And just more fluoride in Canada. So we spent a couple of rest days looking at the mountain. We actually went to the ranger station and asked the head ranger for beta. And he spent about an hour with us giving us like really detailed, when you get to this giant rock, turn right here, whatever, beta. And it was really good. This is inside our little campground at the provincial park with a, I think that's a deer. I don't think that's an elk, it's not big enough.
Deer.
But then, yeah, it's a deer. We had elk walking through there, and we were super proud of this giant. So we go back in a couple of days. And this is our route. This is attempt number 2. And we definitely were better on this attempt. This is, we had a bivvy at the base of the big step. Nice blue photos.
How many pitches did you say that was?
Big step is up 3 pitches. It's
Okay.
600 feet at 5.6. Nice weather this time. Go out and low. That's topping out on the big step. And then we had to go climb through this stuff. And this is called the Black Towers. And a couple of years earlier, I'd gone and tried to do this with Jim Corbett in the day. And apparently, I think it was this snow gully, it might have been one of these over here. Just like a couloir, you could go climb snow all the way to the top of the Black Towers, no rock climbing required. And we got to within about 20 feet of the gully, and the whole thing avalanche right in front of us. And we had no ice screws with us. We had one ice axe each. We were thinking it's a snow gully, we're just gonna run up it.
It was.
And so here, and we ended up having a forced bivvy on the mountain. That was not fun. It was in the 20s at night. We were pretty lightly dressed. Both of us got hypothermia pretty good. We survived. Didn't kill us. No frostbite. But this trip was a lot better. So.
Don't be that miserable.
And that's Tom coming across, scrambling across the Dallas. Let me back up one here. So to tell you what the Black Towers are like, there's not a lot of pictures in the next gap because we got passed by a couple of parties that were climbing it in a day, which are going a lot faster than us. And the Black Towers have a lot of loose rock on them. So above this, we were just getting shelled by rockfall. And at one point, Tom got hit in the head with a softball-sized rock. Fortunately, he was standing on a ledge because the belay for me was a stance and a small TCU. That was the belay. And Tom got hit in the head. He's a big dude. It knocked him on his ass on this giant ledge. And then I'm like, oh shit, he's gonna get knocked out. And he kind of shook his head and stood up. I'm like, you okay? And he goes, yeah, I'm good. All right. So while we're on the Black Towers, we got caught by another party. That included Bert Perry and Tom Woodruff. This is Bert Perry. who's a Georgia native. He lives in Colorado now. And so they were kind enough to wait on us at the summit, and we descended together. But this is at the top of the Black Towers, and you can see you still got 2 miles of summit ridge to get to the summit. So you can't tell from here, but it's like from here to the summit, 2 miles. Yeah. And you're climbing. And there's Tom. The ridge is so long that the corn breaks both ways.
Does it?
So you can see Woody and Tom, they're going a lot faster than we are because they're not carrying Woody here. And there we go. And this is the upper part of the glacier. You can see right here there's a big crevasse coming through like that, and then you can see where they got to cross this side and back over. That's a good shot of Tom, get ready to cross over. And then you can see Woody and Bert right in front of us. That's one of my favorite pictures of all the pictures I've got in my place. And that's Tom about to cross over the forest here. It's going to break the other way. We're still a mile away from the summit. And that's the summit.
Snow on the summit.
And then we had like a 3-hour descent down the tourist trail with the little old ladies in the pools.
Is it like a walk-off or?
Yeah, you walk off. Yeah. So this is a couple of days later. We hooked up with Tom and his family, Darlene, and Bert, and Bert's friend Eric, who was another topic. This is Darlene. This is Tom Kenny's wife. I'm sorry, Tom Woodard's wife. This is her first mountaineering trip. So we were having to like kind of take care of her. And we got on this route here, which is Sky Ladder. There's this ice climb here. And then that's actually not the summit. The summit's over here off the front. And this is Mount Andromeda. This is Mount Athabasca. No, this is all Andromeda. Sorry, this is all Andromeda. Athabasca's over here. You can see it. This is me instructing Darlene in the fine art of hero pose. And so you can see there's a bunch of parties on this route that goes up this. The party ahead of us actually had Charlotte Fox in that party, who was on that Everest expedition that had all those deaths on the year before. So, and this is what you're climbing. This is all like, 60-degree neve. So neve is sort of like compressed snow that has like it looks like ice, but it's got the consistency of styrofoam. So it's like you just run right out of it. And I think that's me on the.
It won't break or anything?
Oh no, it's solid. There's Darlene. First mountaineering trip. Well, it gets funny because we got to the top of this thing and she's thinking, oh, we're at the summit. We're like, oh no, the summit's way over there.
So how do you build a belay on that?
You throw in like long ass high screws.
Really?
Yeah.
So not pickets, but screws.
Yeah, like that long. Yeah. Or if it's really soft, you put pickets in. Usually
You're not
screws
putting
are
them in
better.
though, but every couple of 100 yards, right?
I'm putting a screw in about every 60, 70 feet.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get like, we didn't have fixed belays. We were doing running belays on this. There's Darlene. I think she's got an ear warmer over
She
her
looks
face.
cold.
She's cold. She's actually pretty. She was running marathons at the time. She's actually run like 4 Bostons. She's finished top 1,000 in each year, so she's pretty slender. More stuff. So we got to the top of the sky ladder, and then she's like, "All right, we're done." I'm like, "No, there's the summit. It's like a mile away." Like, oh, okay. So here we are, just trudging up to the summit, and then there we are on the summit. That's Tom Kenny.
Was she happy to be at the summit?
Well, this is the first half of our climb. So there's Tom, there's Bert, and Darlene. And Tom's been doing this for a long time, so he's old hat. And if you look at his helmet, you can see all those white marks. Those are like rocks. Where he's like painted it, and then now it's looks like that. So. And that's the summit photo with all of us.
Who took the picture?
I think Eric took that picture. Eric was like the fifth wheel on this
Jared
trip.
Campbell.
No, there's another Eric that no one liked. Eric was
You
like,
sure like the one he took the picture of.
well, Eric was the most self-centered guy I ever met in my entire life. And I almost got in a fight with him on Robson, and then Woody almost got in a fight with him in Calgary. So, and both of us are pretty mellow, and to provoke either of us or both of us to get in a fight on the same trip was pretty hard to do. There's a cornice, yeah. That's if you look at this, there's like, look at the fracture line there. Yeah, that's a little scary.
You should have got a post on top of that one.
And that's like 12, it's like, from here to here is like probably 15 feet. So yeah, don't walk to the edge. So this is coming off the summit. Notice Darlene has got her helmet in the unbuckled position. We got to this one spot where we had to do a little short glissade, and Darlene's like, I am not doing that. And everyone else is like, well, we're doing it. They're actually roped together at this point. And Tom just like jumps on. Okay.
Took her down too, yeah.
And she finally got, okay, I can get it. So at this point, we're getting ready to set up a rappel. And this is the first time that Darlene has been like on warm rock all day. She's pretty tired. And so she is like kicked back, and I hear her snoring. So I very quietly like got my camera out and very quietly like focused it. And Woody's watching me the whole time. It's her husband. And he's just like, he's not even moving. He's just like, okay. And then, click. She hears the shutter. She sits up. She's, God damn it, Greg! I can't believe you took my picture. I had it blown up and gave it to him for a Christmas present. So this is our first rappel anchor. This is commonly known as a bollard, which is basically a big groove cut in the snow. And it's about 4 feet across right here because it's got a whole body weight. And so we had it backed up with a snow picket behind it, which you can't see from this picture. But since I was the lightest guy in the group at the time, I got to go last without the snow picket back up.
Very the most dispensable person.
Well, yeah, exactly. So this is our rappel. We did 5 rappels on this kind of terrain. And these are the anchors. And for those of you who don't know what these are V-threads, where you take 2 ice screws and you drill a hole and you have the threads meet, the screws meet in the center, and then you thread a cord through it, and that's your anchor. So, and it was pretty much, after the first rappel.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Oh, no, they're great. They're solid. They're more solid than an ice screw.
Yeah, there were 2 of them there. That's like,
Well, there's a party that went down before us, and they already had V-threads, and we said, we got 5 of us, we're going to back them up. So we put our own in. I felt pretty safe on this because we had double V-threads. And we had 5 of us and 5 ropes, so we had like a train going. We had like a production line. So it went pretty fast. We got done.
So Greg, look back if you look. It looks like accessory cord or something that's going to.
Yes, so like this top one is like a cordlet that's been cut down. The bottom one is webbing. And they all go to the same power point right here. And this is just rope down here. But you're exactly right. And a common technique is to take your cordlet and cut it down. And then you just get a new cordlet for the next trip.
And did you leave all that gear
And
up?
you just leave it there and it melts out or it stays for the next year. And this would stay year to year because it's,
So you can use it next year.
yeah, exactly. But generally, it's a disposable thing. So,
That looks like a sandrock anchor.
yeah. So
And all time.
But in the hardware, you pull the rope.
you pull the rope and it's just snow. And to tell you the truth, the newer like super ice wash ropes, the 8mm ones, you can thread those 8mm ropes through the V-thread hole. They're small enough to fit, and a lot of people do that. They'll just thread the rope right through the hole, and this is what we came down. This is the Athabasca Andromeda Call, and it's about 1,000 feet from here to here. So, and did you see the birch run right here? Where this is the crevasse between where the glacier pulls away from the mountain. You got to jump across that on the rappel. So you get like down.
At least you're on a rope.
Yeah, you're on a rope for sure, but it's a pretty big gap, so you've got to like kind of get to the edge and then kind of like, okay, here I go, and let a bunch of slack out and jump.
What's the chance of the lower side sliding down?
You'd fall into the crevasse and climb up
No,
the
but I mean,
side.
the whole lower section looks like it could, I don't know how steep it is.
Once you get down to about here, you just walk off.
Oh, okay, so it's not steep.
No. And that's hiking out. And it's funny because Darlene is like, she's done Boston Marathon like 4 times, and she's just like, and of course she's like exhausted at this point. The rest of us are like, that's another day in the mountains. And she's just like, is everything this hard? And we're like, yeah, it's, she's used to doing her effort in like 4 hours. And
Well, this is mentally exhausting.
This is like a 15-hour day.
I'm sure she was adventurous all day long.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Intense, probably.
And then we go play hacky sack.
Because it's the 90s.
It's kind of washed out. What?
Is it because it's the 90s and that's what you do?
Yeah. And look at Tom's wearing like his little running shorts. This is the Eric dude I was telling you about. This guy. That's me. Believe it or not.
You don't have your product with you for your hair.
No, I didn't have enough grease in my hair for being unshowered for 3 days. So then the next day we went and did, Tom and I did this route here, which is the North Face Athabasca, which goes up in here somewhere. And Eric wanted to tag along, so he wanted someone to help him cross the glacier with a rope, and then he wanted to solo the route. I'm like, okay, whatever. That was my first clue. He wanted to solo the route, but he didn't want to cross the glacier on the road. So he wormed his way into our trip.
Is it a rock route or?
Partially. There's about 30 feet of rock climbing. So Tom and these guys, I can't remember what they were going to go do that day. They were going to do something. They might have done the same route, but this is North Face Athabasca. It's 25 or 2,600 feet of mostly neve climbing with a rock band in the middle. You can see the rock band through here. So, Tom and I did it in 3 pitches. That's Eric starting the rock band. He's soloing. That's me on lead, I think. Tom must have been. Yeah, he's used to the road in there, so that's gotta be me. The rock band actually is pretty good. It's kind of shattered limestone, but there's a bunch of fixed pitons, so you're just clipping those and going through. And the difficult climbing is down below. I had like 10 or 12 screws with me, and so I would just climb like 60, 70 feet and throw a screw in and try to have 2 screws between me and Tom. And then when I got down to the last 2 screws and I was out of rope, Tom was taking the last screw and I throw a belay in. So that got us pretty far. And that's Tom coming up on the upper pitch above the rock band. And that's the summit photo. Oh, so on the way up, I dropped my glacier goggles. So we were in the shade most of the time on the way up. So we get down and going the way down, it's in the sun. I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna go snowblind. And so I figured out that you guys remember power bars?
Yeah.
I figured out that if it's bright enough, you can see through a power bar wrapper.
They're not opening.
So I taped one of those to my head, and that was my glacier goggles. Now, every climbing trip I take on where I need glacier goggles, I always take 2 pairs for this reason.
You don't just take a power bar?
Well,
I take 2 power bars.
Yeah. So that was my trick to get down. That's just coming down.
Did you terrify anybody coming down? Did anybody else run into you?
Nobody else. This is Canada. No one else is there.
Power bar man.
Should have got some sponsorship on her.
I tried to, but I was like, I thought they'd send me a bunch of power bars. So this is more hacky sack. So one of the reasons Eric was such a guy that we hated so bad was that one of our rest days, Eric freaking disappeared for 24 hours. Didn't tell anybody where he was going. He just went off to go take a nap.
For
And
24
for
hours.
24 hours. And we were like getting ready to call the ranger, trying to get a rescue to find him. And he comes wandering back in the camp like nothing happened. And we're just like, dude, you're in a group of 6 people, tell people where you're going. And that was kind of the start of why Eric is not a team player. So, or climbing, I'm going to kind of gloss through this, I think it's not so exciting. At this point, I still was not, Eric was not on my shit list yet. And he convinced me to go climb one of the practice buildings.
I like when you have that prescribed position.
Oh yeah, the helmet fit.
You got the gangster thing going there.
So,
Big LED.
I think I was like 32 or 33 in this.
Alpine gangster.
Yeah. So we actually were going to go up one of these guys here. Yeah, it was everything's bigger back then. This is Andromeda, Mount Andromeda. There's a real famous Canadian Alpine route called Andromeda Strain. I think it goes up through here, but you have to do it in the wintertime when there's enough ice on it to actually do the route.
Really good virus.
Well, the rock is such shattered limestone with no gear that you guys there's got to be ice on it. There's one section if the ice isn't there, you can't do it. So, and I will admit, Eric was pretty good as far as just mountaineering craft. So I did learn some stuff from him. We were doing things like when you're climbing, the other guys really looking for rock fall because you can't see when you're climbing. So the glare of the yellow rock and stuff starts coming down. And that's one of the blaze.
It looks like you got ice axes as your delay.
Yeah, and there's like maybe one piece of crappy rock here to go with it.
They don't look like they're in that good.
No, they're not. No, and one section was like 3 inches of slush. It was pretty ugly. And then, of course, the cause of that is like rock fall and stuff. But it was a fun day. We got to climb something in the mountains, so that was cool. And I learned some stuff. And more climbing. It had a cool finish. You can see him getting ready to chop through the cornice. And that's like going through the cornice at the end. You kind of like find a tunnel and kind of slot through there.
Is there any signs when those cornices can break loose?
No. I mean, they're just there. I mean, I haven't done enough cornices to know, oh, that's about to go, but I don't think anybody does.
That's what like killed all those people on K2.
Oh yeah.
Cornice let loose.
They're deceptive because you think, oh yeah, that's great, and you saw that picture of the cornice on Athabasca. It was 15 feet to the edge of the big fracture line. You couldn't see from above. So yeah, and we were doing temple. Sometimes you punch your tool through the cornice and you pull it out, and you can see the cornice was only that thick. And your ice axe will go all the way through.
You see like this.
You can see like a
there.
hole through the ice, and like a 4,000-foot drop. But you didn't know it was there because you're thinking you're this far from the edge. But the cornice was only like that thick all the way through. So yeah, they're deceptive. Good thing your mom's not here, right?
Lauren's here, okay.
So yeah. So this is just getting ready to go down. Something to center. More than 6. Just flip through these. These are just kind of boring. And then we're back at Bert's van. At this point in the trip, Tom had to go home, and I decided to hook up with these guys because we wanted to go to Robson. So now instead of having 4 people jammed into Bert's Volkswagen camper van, we had 5 of us. So it was like the freaking clown car. And we went to Robson, where we heard they had 12 days of good weather. So let's go catch the tail end of that. Of course, we got there and it stormed like crazy. This is on the approach, and this is one of those rivers where if you fell into it, it's like you're just gonna die. Fortunately, there was good bridges. There's Greggy with his pink pants and his giant boots.
It's chicken legs.
And his chicken legs.
I didn't make the REI fellow.
No, it didn't.
Shocking.
There's Bert with his giant pack.
Wow.
Body bag.
Great gym.
That might have been. This is the Robson River. Everything in Canada is just big and scary. And there's a nice picture of Bert, Darlene, and Woody. And Robson River. And candy shot of Darlene. And then we got to the base of Robson, and guess what we saw? Freaking storm.
Thunder?
I think somebody dropped something.
Somebody what?
Like something big falling.
Big storm.
So, this wasn't a picture of this, but the first fight that the first time Eric almost got his ass kicked, we were divvying up group gear, and we divvied up like Eric communicated the ice screws for our trip. And like 5 of us going up Robson, which is a big ass mountain. We figured, okay, 10 ice screws ought to be enough. He's like, oh, that's too many, I'm not carrying 10 ice screws. We can do it with 8. And I'm like, and there's like a shit ton of group gear for like 4 days of climbing this big mountain. Food, fuel, and it's a bunch of stuff. And Eric was gonna refuse to carry his share of the load, 2 ice screws. And I'm just like, I lost it. If you wanna go with us on this trip, you're carrying the damn screws, or you can just freaking stay here in the parking lot. Yeah, it was ugly. Wasn't as ugly as when you tried to.
Alright, we don't need to get into this, just keep going with the pictures.
So yeah, so hanging out. This is Robson, it's big, scary. And we got there and it was like socked in, so we had to turn it back. Yeah, more marks and stuff. So it's hard to tell this. These are dandelions in Canada, but they're about a foot high. And the dandelion flower part is about as big as a tennis ball.
Like you said, everything's big in Canada.
They're
right?
freaking giant. And this sign here shows where the toe of the glacier was from. Anybody read that?
It says in something, the Alpine Club of Canada, you made it list.
In 1981.
Something measured, I'm guessing I can't.
This picture was taken in
You screw with the
1981.
focus, it'll get better. No, other way. Whoa, you went
Oh,
too
how
far.
was that?
Too far. That's about as good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That says Alpine Club.
Yeah, this is, I think, from like 1890 something. It's like 100 years ago. That's where the toe of the glacier was. So they marked it.
Print was blurry back then.
Yeah, more sign. We basically walked up the toe of the glacier, saw how crappy the weather was, and we're like, nah, we're not doing that. So we hung out in the cook hut.
What? Nice hut.
That's in the Canadian parks, it's like they don't really have like huts to sleep in, but they have these communal huts to cook in. So you can go in there and they got a wood burning stove or a fireplace and drying racks for all your wet gear. And you can go in, you can't sleep in there, but you can cook all you want. So if the weather turns to shit, you just go in there and cook, eat your meals and hang out, and everybody's there, not just you.
You
your
stay there all
party.
night then?
No, you can't sleep there.
What if you're not sleeping?
What if you're just drinking and talking?
Well, it's kind of funny because Bert was newly single on this trip, and we found this really cute Canadian Ranger. We kind of set them up, and she actually kind of hinted that she knew where the whiskey stash was, but she wouldn't tell us. So we're like, Bert, you need to go find out where the whiskey stash is and hang out with her. And she's like, no, I'm not ready for that. I'm like, all right, whatever. She was pretty cute little Ranger.
For about 4 hours.
So we hiked out. This is the outflow of the Robson Glacier, Robson River. And it's just but it's pretty.
Crazy bridge.
Yeah, the bridges were pretty solid. There's the clown car. So, does anybody recognize this?
Is that the dog pad?
Yes.
Yes, that is Daisy's dog pad.
used to be Greg's sleep pad.
Stacked it. So this is the clown car with 5 of us and all our shit.
You slept all 5 people in there?
No, shit, no, we didn't sleep in there. We just drove in there.
All their stuff. I took a picture. We were going through this stuff last week, and I took a picture of this and sent it to Sean and Cole, my sister and her husband. And I was like, look, there's Daisy's pad in the early 90s. And Sean's response was, Daisy deserves better than that.
I was gonna say, maybe it's time for Christmas.
So, from here we drove to Calgary. We were going to spend the night at my friend, at our friend Robin in, what was his wife's name? I can't remember. Anyway, these are some friends of ours, and we get there, and Eric, who's Mr. I gotta have my nap guy, gets out of the car and goes straight to the house and camps out in the guest bedroom. And we are like unloading the clown car, all this shit. And so we're like trying to figure out, okay, where's my clean clothes? Where's, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so it takes us like 30 minutes to get all this shit sorted out. We go in the house, and Eric is like laying in bed in the guest room. And so we find him, Woody and I find him, and Woody's like, you're not sleeping in here. And he goes, I got here first, dibs, you know. And Woody says, no, you're sleeping outside. And Eric is like, what do you mean I'm sleeping outside? He's like, because you're an asshole.
Oh my God.
And that you don't deserve to sleep in the house, you know. And so, you know, you're gonna sleep outside. And he goes, and Eric's like, what? And I'm like standing there right next to him, and I'm like, you're sleeping outside, Eric. And he knew what I would do to him. So Woody's bigger than I am, and so he packed up his shit and set up a tent in the backyard. We would not let him in the house. And yeah, we did not like Eric.
You also have Christmas cards anymore?
I took a shit ton of pictures on the trip, and Eric begged me for a year and a half to send him the pictures, and I would never do it. I wouldn't even respond to his emails. He basically,
I was just wondering.
he
Where did you
he
live at?
was not a team player, and he didn't deserve any. You know, I'm a pretty mellow guy. This is one guy I truly, really hated. So, but yeah, he was just the most selfish person I ever met. You know what, screw you. So, I'll tell you off the record, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you, I'm not gonna tell you. Yeah, but I'll tell you a story about him.
Right.
That's it.
All right, big time.
Cool.
Thank you.